At 12:07 on a Tuesday night, the wall between my bedroom and apartment 4B started to cry. Not the polite kind of crying people try to hide in a pillow. This was the broken, breathless kind that made me sit straight up in bed and forget the half-finished inspection report glowing on my laptop. I lived in 4A, in an old brick building in Baltimore where the floors complained, the radiators knocked like ghosts, and privacy was mostly a rumor. My neighbor, Mara Ellis, had lived beside me for 8 months. We had shared elevator nods, misdelivered mail, and one snow shovel, but not secrets. I tapped the wall once. "Mara?" The crying stopped. For a second, I thought I had made it worse. Then her voice came through, thin and shaking. "Owen?" "Yeah." Another pause. Then she said, "Please come over." Before I tell you why I walked into 4B carrying a toolbox and came out carrying a secret, take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Would you knock on a neighbor's door at midnight? I should have grabbed my phone first. I should have asked if she was hurt, if someone was inside, if she needed police or an ambulance. Instead, I did what I had done my whole life when something sounded broken. I reached for my toolbox. When Mara opened the door, she looked at the toolbox, then at me, and gave the smallest, strangest laugh. "I don't need a contractor." "Good," I said, "because technically I'm off the clock." Her apartment smelled like sugar, yeast, and something burned at the edges. The kitchen looked like a storm had been trapped in it. A wooden shelf had torn loose from the wall. Glass jars lay shattered across the floor. Peach preserves crawled slowly under the refrigerator. A dented metal bowl rocked gently, as if it had just survived impact. On the table sat a certified letter, opened and folded so sharply it looked wounded. Mara stood barefoot in the middle of it all, wearing black leggings, an oversized gray sweatshirt, and flour on one cheek. Her dark hair had escaped its knot. Her hands were clenched around a dish towel. "Are you hurt?" I asked. She shook her head. "No." "Is anyone else here?" "No. Do you want me to call someone?" "Me too." I did. Her mouth tightened. "My sister said I should take the job in Phoenix. My mother said Julian was probably trying to be generous. I couldn't hear one more person explain my life back to me." That was the first time I heard Julian's name. I looked at the broken shelf, the letter, the ruined jars, and finally at her. "So what do you need?" Her eyes filled again, but she didn't let the tears fall. "I have a catering tasting at 9 in the morning. Those were my peach cardamom preserves. The shelf fell because I overloaded it, because I was trying to make one last batch, because this letter says I have 30 days to leave my bakery." She swallowed. "And I need somebody to sit here for 10 minutes so I don't quit everything tonight. I set the toolbox down by the door. Then I'll sit." That seemed to surprise her more than if I had started fixing the wall. She pointed toward a chair with one hand, while she pressed the dish towel to her mouth with the other. I sat. She stood. The refrigerator hummed between us like it was trying not to intrude. I knew how to be useful. I knew how to brace a beam, read a cracked foundation, tell a client when a beautiful old building was lying about its bones. I did not know how to sit with a woman who had asked me not to fix anything, so I kept my mouth shut. After a minute, Mara said, "You're very literal. You said sit." "I did. I'm trying to respect the scope of work." That got a real laugh out of her, small but steady. She wiped her cheek with the back of her wrist. "You always talk like that?" "Only when I'm nervous." "You're nervous?" "It's midnight. I'm in my neighbor's kitchen. There's jam on my sock." "Yes." She looked down and saw the peach preserves spreading near my left foot. This time, when she laughed, she covered her face with both hands, and the sound cracked open the room just enough for air to come in. After 10 minutes, she let me sweep the glass. After 15, she let me take the shelf off the remaining bracket. After 20, she made coffee so strong I could feel my ancestors wake up. Her bakery was called Mara's Table. I knew that because sometimes she came home before dawn, carrying empty trays with the logo stamped on brown paper labels. The shop was 6 blocks away, on Greenmount Avenue, tucked between a frame store and a barber who kept a red neon sign burning late. She told me she had signed a 3-year lease after leaving a restaurant group where she had been professionally and personally stupid. Her words, not mine. The certified letter came from a company called Harbor 9th Holdings. They had bought the block. Her lease had a redevelopment clause, 30 days notice, no option to renew, no explanation beyond future site consolidation. Julian Voss owns Voss Hospitality, she said, staring into her coffee. Voss Hospitality has been buying properties through little companies with boring names. My mother thinks he's offering me a lifeboat. I think he bought the water. Was he your boss? My fiancé. The word landed quietly, but it changed the shape of the kitchen. Ex-fiancé, she added. Very ex. I did not ask the obvious questions. At 37, I had finally learned that curiosity could wear a helpful mask and still be selfish. I just nodded toward the remaining jars on the counter. How many batches can you still make before 9? She blinked. You really want to talk about preserves? You have a tasting. You don't have to stay. I know. And I'm not paying you. I figured the jam on my sock was my bonus. She leaned her hip against the counter, studying me as if deciding whether I was safe or merely polite. There are peaches in the fridge. The cardamom is in the cabinet above the stove. If you ask me where anything else is, I may cry again. I'm a professional finder of hidden damage, I said. Spices are within my training. That was how our first real conversation happened. Barefoot, exhausted, sweeping glass and boiling peaches after midnight. She measured without looking. I washed jars. She corrected the way I tightened lids. I corrected the way her shelf had been anchored into old plaster instead of a stud. She rolled her eyes and told me not to flirt with hardware. I'm not flirting, I said. Good. Because if I were, I'd use better material. She looked over her shoulder then, and for 1 second, the tiredness lifted from her face. That was almost smooth, Owen. Almost. That word stayed with me. By 2:30, 8 jars of peach cardamom preserves sat cooling on towels, and the broken shelf leaned harmlessly by the door. Mara filled a small paper bag with 2 rolls she had made earlier and held it out to me. For coming over, she said. You asked. A lot of people don't wait to be asked. I took the bag. A lot of people confuse helping with taking over. Something changed in her expression, something careful and unguarded at the same time. Exactly. I went back to 4A with sticky shoes, a warm bag of rolls, and the odd feeling that the wall between our apartments had become less solid than it was supposed to be. The next morning, I woke late, which never happened. My inspection report was still open on my laptop. My coffee maker had not been loaded. My left sock was stiff with dried preserves. I was halfway through cursing myself when I heard a metal crash in the hallway. Mara stood by the elevator with 3 catering boxes stacked on a rolling cart, whose front wheel had snapped sideways. Her hair was pinned now, her lipstick was red, and the only sign of midnight was a faint shadow under her eyes. Don't say it, she warned. I haven't said anything. You're looking at the wheel like it insulted your family. It did. She tried to lift the boxes and nearly lost the top one. I caught it before it tipped. For a moment, our hands closed on the same cardboard edge. I can carry these down, I said. I can manage. I didn't say you couldn't. I said I can carry them. She took a breath, then nodded once. Fine. But only because gravity is being dramatic. In the elevator, the scent of warm butter and cardamom filled the air. I held 2 boxes. She held one, her chin raised like dignity itself weighed 15 pounds, and she could still bench press it. Big tasting? I asked. Big enough? Restaurant? Private foundation gala? If they like the menu, it could cover payroll for a month. She glanced at me, assuming I still have a place to pay people from. Outside, her old blue van waited at the curb. I loaded the boxes while she checked each label twice. Before she climbed in, she looked at me over the roof. About last night, she said. I don't usually fall apart in front of men I barely know. I don't usually make preserves with women who threaten to cry over spice questions. Then we're both expanding. She drove off, and I stood there longer than I needed to. 2 hours later, I walked into the conference room at Pierce and Lane Restoration and saw the address of her bakery projected on a screen. 1248 Greenmount Avenue, Harbor 9th Redevelopment Package. Client, Voss Hospitality Group. My boss, Denise, tapped the glass wall with a dry erase marker. Owen, you'll lead structural due diligence. Old block, mixed use, possible historic facade constraints. Good visibility if we land the full conversion. I stared at the photograph on the screen. Mara's table was right there, its green awning bright under a gray sky. Denise noticed. Problem? I could have said no. I could have told myself the world was full of coincidences, that my job had nothing to do with Mara's tears, that professionals kept clean lines between personal feelings and paid work. I had built a career on clean lines. But I heard Mara's voice from midnight. Please come over. I know one of the tenants, I said. Denise lowered the marker. How well? Neighbor, personal contact, conflict? Potentially. She sighed. Not angry, just practical. We haven't signed final paperwork. Disclose it in writing. Until I review, don't contact the tenant about the project. That was the right answer. It also meant I could not warn Mara about anything inside that file, even the parts that made my stomach tighten. All afternoon, I inspected another site and thought about a woman standing barefoot among broken jars, asking for 10 minutes of steadiness. By 5, I had written the disclosure. By 6, Denise had removed me from the Voss assignment. By 7, she called me into her office. You understand what this costs you? She asked. I did. The Voss contract was large. I had been in line for senior partner consideration, and leading that project would have helped. I understand. Denise studied me. Is this tenant worth slowing your career? The old version of me would have resented the question. The honest version knew she was asking what a good boss should ask. I'm not doing it for her, I said. I'm doing it because if I stay on, I can't trust my own judgment. Denise nodded slowly. That is the most Owen answer possible. When I got home, I found a paper bag hanging on my doorknob. Inside was a roll glazed with orange, still soft, and a note. Tasting went well. Wheel still dead. Thank you for not saying I told you so. I stood in the hallway with the note in my hand, and felt like a man looking at a door he had been pretending was just a door. I should have told her immediately about the project. I did not because I wanted to hide it, but because the ethical version of the truth had become tangled. I could not discuss the client file. I could only discuss myself. So I wrote a note back. I was assigned today to inspect a redevelopment project that includes your block. I disclosed our connection and removed myself. I can't share confidential information. I can tell you, as any tenant can learn publicly, ask for every notice in writing, get a copy of your lease reviewed, and call the city small business office before you sign anything. Owen. I slid it under her door before I could talk myself into a warmer ending. She knocked 30 seconds later. When I opened my door, she was holding the note. She had changed into jeans and a faded sweatshirt that said, "Flower is a love language." Her face was calm, but not soft. "Julian sent you?" she asked. "No, you expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to believe I'm telling you the truth. Those are different things." "Yes." She looked past me into my apartment, at the drafting table, the rolled plans, the neat rows of labeled wood samples. You inspect buildings for developers and owners, preservation groups, nonprofits, sometimes people who buy houses with more optimism than sense. But this developer, I didn't know until today. She looked down at the note again. "You removed yourself?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I came into your kitchen last night. Because you told me things you wouldn't have told the person inspecting your building. Because even if I never said a word, it would be wrong." Her jaw worked like she was holding back 3 responses and trusting none of them. "Julian is very good at making things look accidental." "I'm not, Julian, I know that." She folded the note carefully. "That doesn't mean I know what you are. It was a fair sentence. It still hurt." "I'm your neighbor," I said. "That's all I'm claiming." She gave one short nod. "Then thank you, neighbor." For 2 days, the wall between us went quiet. I heard her leave before dawn. I heard her come home late. I heard cabinets open and close, the ordinary sounds of someone surviving by schedule. I did not knock. I did not text. I fixed the shelf bracket I had taken from her kitchen and left it outside her door with the screws taped to it, then went back to my apartment before she could think I was waiting for gratitude. On Friday evening, Mrs. Alvarez, our building manager, caught me in the lobby while I was sorting mail. "You are the man with the ladder," she said. "I've been called worse." She pointed towards the front steps, where Mara sat with her elbows on her knees and her phone in both hands. "She needs people who do not push. I'm trying not to. Trying is good. Hiding is not the same thing." Mrs. Alvarez had a way of saying things like she had been born with a church bell inside her chest. She was 72, 5 feet tall, and feared by every package thief in Federal Hill. "I'm not hiding," I said. She smiled. Men always say that when they are standing very still. I went outside. Mara did not look surprised to see me. She moved her bag from the step, making room but not quite inviting me. I sat anyway, leaving a careful foot of space between us. "My sister found me a job in Phoenix," she said. "At a bakery? A hotel? Good salary. Benefits. No ex-fiancé buying the sidewalk under me. Sounds practical. That's what everyone keeps saying. What do you want them to say?" She turned the phone in her hands. "I want one person to say it would be reasonable to fight for something even if I might lose. It would be reasonable to fight for something even if you might lose." Her eyes flicked to mine. "You sound like you're reading instructions. I'm trying not to overstep. That's annoying. I was told not to push." "By who?" "Mrs. Alvarez." Mara looked toward the lobby windows, where Mrs. Alvarez immediately pretended to water a plant that had been plastic since 2014. Mara laughed under her breath. Then she passed me her phone. On the screen was an email from the city's small business office. Emergency relocation grants existed, but the deadline was Monday. Applicants needed a proposed location, budget, lease terms, and proof of revenue disruption. "I don't have a location," she said. "I don't have time. And if I let you help, I'm afraid I'll confuse relief with trust." That was the first thing she said that sounded like the truth under all the other truths. "My help can have limits," I said. "You decide the line." She studied me. "No money? Fine. No calling Julian. Gladly. No treating me like a project. That one deserved care. Mara, I restore buildings because I like when old things get another life. People are not buildings. Some men disagree. I'm not some men. She looked away, but I saw her shoulders lower slightly. There's an old firehouse on Calvert Street. The city owns it. Empty kitchen from a failed culinary program. I looked at it once and talked myself out of it. When? January? Why? Because wanting it made me feel stupid. I stood. Then let's go look at something stupid. Firehouse number 12 sat behind a chain-link fence. Red brick darkened by rain. Arched doors boarded, but not ruined. The city representative could not meet until Monday, so we looked from outside like two kids staring through a bakery window. Mara pressed her fingers to the fence and stared at the faded gold number above the door. I had this whole idea, she said. Morning bread, evening classes, shared kitchen hours for women starting food businesses from home. My father used to say tables were where people learned to come back to each other. He sounds smart. He was. Her voice caught on the last word. She reached into her bag and touched a cream-colored envelope, then pushed it deeper before I could read more than her name written across it. I noticed. She noticed, me noticing. My father left that with his lawyer, she said. It got mailed after some estate paperwork finished. I haven't opened it. You don't have to tell me why. I know. She turned from the fence. That's why I did. We walked the perimeter. I pointed out roof issues, drainage problems, the good bones behind neglect. She took notes faster than I could talk. When I warned that the rear wall needed a proper inspection, she did not shrink. She asked about costs. She asked about permits. She asked what could wait and what could not. There she was, I thought. Not broken, not rescued, just tired of carrying a dream alone. On Sunday afternoon, Julian Voss walked into Mara's table while I was helping install a temporary display shelf she had designed herself and allowed me to build only after approving the measurements. I knew it was him before she said his name. He had the confident stillness of a man who expected rooms to rearrange around him. Expensive coat. Easy smile. No visible hurry. Mara, he said, as if her name belonged in his mouth. She stepped down from the stool. Julian. His eyes moved to me, then the shelf, then back to her. I heard the foundation loved your tasting. They liked the food. Same thing? Not always. His smile thinned, but only for a second. I came because I want to solve this gracefully. The gala is Friday. Cater it under the Voss Hospitality Partner banner. I'll make sure your lease situation slows down. You'll have breathing room. Mara folded her arms. Breathing room with a leash. That's unfair, is it? He glanced at me again. This is business, Mara. Don't let old feelings make it ugly. The room went very still. I wanted to step forward. I wanted to say something with edges. But Mara had told me the line. She lifted her chin. My old feelings are not the reason you bought my block through a holding company. Julian's jaw tightened. The block was part of a strategic acquisition. My bakery was part of my life. And I'm offering you a way to preserve it. No, she said. You're offering me a way to stand under your logo. For the first time, his smile disappeared. Think carefully. Stability is not an insult. No, Mara said, but control dressed up as stability is still control. Julian looked at her for a long moment, then nodded as if disappointed in a child. Friday, then. If you want the gala, my office needs signed terms by tomorrow. After he left, the bakery seemed to exhale. Mara gripped the counter. Say nothing noble. I was going to say your shelf is level. She looked at me, and the anger cracked into a laugh she clearly did not want. Coward. Strategic coward. Her laughter faded. He used to do that. Make every choice sound like maturity if it benefited him, recklessness if it didn't. You don't have to take the gala. I know. She looked around the bakery, at the cases, the chalkboard menu, the back table where 2 employees were pretending very hard not to listen. But I might need the money. Then change the terms. He won't. Ask anyway. In writing, under your business name. No partner banner unless you approve the exact language. No recipe rights. No non-compete. Payment schedule clear. You sound like you've read a lot of contracts. I inspect buildings. Half the cracks are in the paperwork. She took out her phone. If I write this email, will you read it for tone? I can read for structural integrity, of course you can. Monday arrived like a deadline wearing work boots. The city representative agreed to walk us through firehouse number 12 at noon. Mara had slept 3 hours. I had slept 4. Mrs. Alvarez sent us with coffee and a bag of empanadas for morale and blood sugar. Inside, the firehouse was dusty, cold, and beautiful. Sunlight came through high windows in pale columns. The old kitchen had stainless counters, a giant sink, cracked tile, and enough problems to scare off a dreamer who needed everything perfect. Mara was not scared off. She walked slowly from station to station, touching nothing without asking. She measured doorways. She photographed outlets. She listened when I explained the difference between expensive now and expensive later. When the city representative mentioned a short-term pilot lease for qualified community food programs, Mara's pen stopped. How short-term? She asked. 12 months, renewable. Reduced rent if programming serves neighborhood entrepreneurs. Her eyes moved to mine, then away. I could see the idea arriving in her body before she trusted it. By 3, she had a location. By 6, she had revised gala terms. By midnight, we sat at my dining table building a relocation budget from invoices, sales reports, and estimates scribbled on napkins. At 1:15, she pushed back from the table. Why did you really give up that project? I set down my pencil. I told you. You told me the ethical answer. That was the real answer. Was it the only one? Outside, a siren passed. Rose, faded. I looked at the plans spread between us, then at her tired eyes. No, I said. She went still. I chose each word like it mattered, because it did. I didn't like the idea of being on the side of something that hurt you. Her breath changed. That doesn't mean you owe me anything, I added. Not trust, not gratitude, not a softer opinion. Good, she said, but softly. Good. She looked down at the budget. I don't want to be someone's noble sacrifice. You're not. I don't want to need a man so badly I mistake him for a plan. You are the plan, Mara. Her eyes lifted. I did not reach for her. I did not turn the moment into a scene where my feelings could crowd hers. I only sat there while the words found their place. She touched the cream-colored envelope in her bag again. This time she took it out and laid it on the table between us. My father's last letter, she said. I kept thinking if I opened it, then he was really gone. But maybe I've been using grief as a locked door. You want me to leave? She shook her head. No. I want you to stay. But don't read it unless I hand it to you. So I stayed. She opened the envelope with a butter knife, because neither of us could find a letter opener. Inside was a handwritten note and a folded photocopy of an old newspaper clipping. Her father's handwriting was large and slanted, the kind of handwriting that looked like it belonged to a man who fixed his own porch. Mara read silently at first. Her mouth trembled. Then she laughed once, painfully, and pressed the page to her chest. What? I asked. She handed me the clipping, not the letter. It showed firehouse number 12 from 12 years earlier, when the city had first proposed turning it into a culinary training center. Someone had circled the building in blue pen. At the bottom, her father had written, "This one has a table big enough." Mara covered her face. He knew. About the firehouse? About me. She wiped her eyes. He always knew I'd try to shrink my life until no one could criticize it. She handed me the last paragraph of the letter. "If this reaches you after I'm gone, don't make comfort your only compass. Comfort is good for shoes and soup. It is too small for a life. Build the table, Mara. People will come." I read it twice, then gave it back. She folded the letter carefully. There's no secret fortune, no miracle check. Rude of him. That startled a laugh out of her. "But there is this," she said, touching the page. "And maybe that's worse, because now I can't pretend he wanted me to be practical." The grant application went in at 11:52 p.m. We sat side by side, watching the confirmation screen like it was a heartbeat monitor. When it submitted, Mara leaned back and closed her eyes. Her shoulder brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. Friday came with rain, nerves, and a gala contract Julian had signed only after Mara's revised terms made 3 trips through his assistant. The event was at a renovated warehouse by the harbor, all exposed brick, white flowers, and donors holding glasses they barely drank from. Mara wore a dark green dress and simple gold earrings. She had brought her own staff, her own signage, and a reclaimed wood display stand I had built to her sketch. The sign read, "Mara's Table" in clean white letters. No Voss logo, no partner banner. "You look like you're going to war with pastry," I said while we set the final tray. "I am. You'll win." She adjusted one label by a 1/4 inch. "Don't say things just because they sound nice. I'm saying it because I've tasted the orange rolls. That is acceptable evidence." For 2 hours, she was brilliant. Not loud, not flashy. Brilliant. She remembered names. She explained her food without apology. She spoke about Firehouse number 12 as a community kitchen, not a fallback. People listened. People signed the interest sheet. A woman from a local business fund asked for a meeting. One of Mara's employees cried quietly near the coffee urn and blamed allergies. Then Julian walked onto the small stage. I had been across the room refilling cards when I heard his voice through the speakers. "Tonight is about investing in the future of Baltimore hospitality, and sometimes that future includes welcoming talented people back into the family." Mara froze beside the dessert table. Julian smiled toward her. "Many of you have enjoyed the beautiful work of Mara Ellis tonight. Mara began her career with us, and we're proud to be in conversation about bringing her vision into the Voss hospitality umbrella again." A murmur moved through the room. I looked at Mara. Every part of me wanted to go to that stage and correct him. Every part of me knew that would make his sentence bigger than hers. Her hand closed around the edge of the table. Then she looked at the sign we had carried in together. Mara's table. Her father's letter was folded inside her clutch. I knew because I had seen her put it there. She stepped away from the table. Julian kept smiling until she reached the stage. Then his eyes sharpened. "Mara," he said into the microphone, still smooth. "Come say a word." She took the microphone from him, not rudely, not timidly. Simply. "Thank you, Julian," she said. Her voice was steady enough to make the room settle. "I do want to say a word, because clarity matters. Mara's Table is not joining Voss Hospitality. I'm grateful to be here as an independent caterer tonight, under my own name, with my own recipes, and with my own staff. Julian's smile stayed in place, but it no longer reached any part of him. Mara looked out at the crowd. In 30 days, my current storefront will close because the building has been sold. That is true, but closing a storefront is not the same as closing a table. I've applied to launch a community kitchen at Firehouse number 12, where small food businesses can rent space, learn, and serve this city without having to hand their names to someone bigger. The room was silent now. My father used to say, "A table is where people learn to come back to each other," she continued. "If you want to help build that table, there's a sign-up sheet by the orange rolls. And if you just came here for dessert, that's fine too." Dessert has always been a respectable beginning. Someone laughed. Then someone clapped. Then Mrs. Alvarez, who had somehow acquired a gala ticket through methods I did not ask about, stood near the back and clapped like she was calling saints down from heaven. The applause grew. Julian stepped toward the microphone, but Mara handed it back before he could take the moment from her. Then she walked off the stage, crossed the room, and came straight to me. Her face was pale, her hands shook, but her eyes were clear. "Did I just ruin my life?" she whispered. "No," I said. "You just put your name on it." That was the moment I stopped pretending I was only being careful. I was careful, yes. But I was also in love with her. Not with the crisis, not with being needed. With the woman who could stand in front of a room that expected her to be graceful and choose honesty instead. By the end of the night, the sign-up sheet was full. The business fund woman had scheduled coffee. 3 donors had asked about sponsoring kitchen equipment. Julian did not confront Mara. He only passed once, leaned close enough for me to hear, and said, "You always did know how to make a scene." Mara smiled at him. "No, I finally learned how to take up space." After he left, she turned to me. "I need air." We went outside under the warehouse awning. Rain silvered the street. The harbor lights blurred in the puddles. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then Mara said, "Phoenix called this afternoon. They need my answer by Monday." The happiness in me stepped back. "What are you going to tell them?" I asked. She looked at the rain. "I don't know." I forced myself to nod. "It's a good job, it is. You'd be safe." "Probably." "And bored?" She laughed weakly. "Probably." I put my hands in my pockets so I would not reach for her just because I was afraid. "Mara, I want you to stay. I'm not going to dress that up. But I don't want you to stay because I want it." She turned toward me slowly. "I want you to stay if this is your fight," I said. "If it's your table, if it's your city, if it's your life. And if it isn't, I'll help you load the van." Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. "You always wait for the invitation." "I'm learning." "No." She stepped closer. "That was why I asked you that night." I frowned. "What?" "At midnight. I heard you once before we really talked. In the hallway after Mrs. Alvarez fell. You fixed her railing, and her nephew tried to pay you. He said you were the kind of man who saved people. You told him, 'I'm trying to stop saving people who didn't ask.'" I remembered the conversation. I had not known Mara was behind her door. "I asked you to come over," she said, "because I thought maybe you would know the difference." Rain tapped the awning above us. The whole city seemed to hold still. "I'm not always good at the difference," I said. "You were good enough." I wanted to kiss her then. I wanted it so badly my chest hurt. But her life had just cracked open in public, and my wanting did not get to become another demand. So I said, "When you know what you're choosing, tell me." She looked at my mouth, then back at my eyes. "That is both decent and extremely frustrating. I contain multitudes." This time when she laughed, she leaned her forehead briefly against my chest. I let my hand rest lightly between her shoulders, and when she stepped back, I let her, The grant was approved on Monday morning. Not fully funded. Not magically easy. Approved for a pilot lease, relocation assistance, and access to a neighborhood development loan if she could raise a matching deposit in 10 days. Mara screamed so loudly through the wall that I dropped a coffee mug. Then she knocked on my door holding the email. "I'm not going to Phoenix," she said. I tried to answer like a reasonable adult. What came out was, "Thank God." She smiled, then pointed at me. "For the bakery, for the firehouse, for me. Not because of you. I know. But also," her confidence flickered for the first time, "not without wanting to see what this is. This? You. Me. The thing where I sleep 3 hours and still notice if you've eaten dinner." I leaned one shoulder against the doorframe because my knees had become unreliable. "I've noticed things too." "Like what?" "Like you pretend not to like help. But you always say thank you to the person, not the favor. Like you label everything except the things that scare you. Like when you're happy, you touch your father's letter even if it's not there." Her face softened. "And," I said, "you make the best orange rolls in Maryland. That last one was obvious. I'm building my case carefully." She looked down the hall, then back at me. "I don't want to rush because adrenaline is romantic." Agreed. I don't want us to confuse teamwork with love. Also agreed. But I don't want to pretend there's nothing here just because pretending feels safer. I stepped out into the hallway, leaving my door open behind me. "Then we don't pretend." She held my gaze. Dinner. Friday. Not grant paperwork, not shelves, not crisis. A date? A date. Yes. Her smile arrived slowly, like sunrise through a window someone had finally cleaned. Good. 3 months later, firehouse number 12 still had roof issues, permit headaches, and one back door that swelled every time it rained. It also had stainless counters polished bright, a community board covered in class schedules, and a long reclaimed table in the center of the room. Mara's table reopened there on a Saturday morning with a line down the block. Mrs. Alvarez ran the cash box like a benevolent dictator. Mara's mother flew in from Arizona and cried into a napkin after admitting, quietly, that practical advice sometimes came from fear wearing sensible shoes. Mara hugged her for a long time. Julian sent flowers. Mara donated them to the lobby of the senior center next door. As for us, we moved slowly on purpose. Friday dinners became Sunday walks. Sunday walks became grocery lists with both our handwriting on them. I still lived in 4A. She still lived in 4B. The wall between us remained thin, but now it carried different sounds. Her laughing at a podcast, me dropping a pan, both of us knocking once when the other had been working too long. One night, close to midnight, I heard the soft tap we had come to use instead of texting. 3 knocks from her side. I tapped back. "You okay?" A pause. Then Mara's voice came through the wall, warm and steady. "Please come over." I smiled before I even stood. This time I did not bring the toolbox. Her apartment was clean, quiet, and lit by one lamp in the kitchen. On the repaired shelf sat jars of peach cardamom preserves, each one labeled for the firehouse opening donors. On the table were 2 plates, 2 orange rolls, and a signed copy of the full 3-year lease for firehouse number 12. Mara stood beside it in bare feet, wearing the same gray sweatshirt from that first night. "No tears?" I asked. "Not sad ones. That's an important inspection category." She held out her hand. I took it. "I wanted you to see this here," she said. "Not at the firehouse, not in front of everyone. Here, because this is where I almost quit." I looked at the shelf, the jars, the table, the woman who had asked me to sit when I wanted to fix. and didn't. Because you came over. Because you asked. She stepped closer. I'm asking again. For what? For you. Not as my contractor. Not as my emergency contact. Not as the man with ethical boundaries so attractive they should be regulated. Her thumb moved over my knuckles. As you. My throat tightened. Then yes. You didn't hear the question. I heard enough. She laughed, and I finally kissed her. Gently. No rush, no rescue. Just a promise both of us were awake enough to choose. Afterward, she rested her forehead against mine and whispered, We're going to be careful, right? Yes. And honest? Yes. And if I overload a shelf again, I will lovingly point out the stud locations. She kissed me once more. That is the most romantic, terrible answer. Maybe love does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes through an old apartment wall at midnight. Sometimes it sounds like crying first. Sometimes it waits in the hallway until someone is brave enough to ask. And sometimes, if you are lucky, the same words that once meant, "Please help me survive this night," become something entirely different. Please come over. Please stand beside me. Please choose this with me. If this story reminded you of someone who showed up without taking over, like the video and subscribe for more stories about love, second chances, and quiet courage. And tell me in the comments, is real love more about saving someone or staying when they choose themselves?